Hello. Good afternoon. Welcome to our Facebook live stream. I had promised everyone last week that this week I was going to talk about making change and steps that you can take. And I was going to share one particular story with you guys, but I had something happen right before I got on live, and I thought, yeah, that's the story to share because it's in the moment and it's actually happening to me right now. And it's about this first important step. So just keep that in mind. I'm going to come back to that in a minute. And let me just say this. I'm Tony. For those of you that don't know me, Tony Genovese. I am a therapist and also a health and life coach. And I have this Facebook group. It's a closed group that I put together to help members feel some inner strength. And my business is called Strong at the Core for that reason, to have that place to come back to. When I first started the group, a lot of members in the group were working on things like weight loss and a healthy lifestyle. And I think basically that is still a theme for the group. But as the group has evolved, I'm hearing more people talking about life transition, improving relationships, parenting issues. And basically, and I even polled the group, and one of the things, hi, welcome, I see some people are joining us now. The theme that came up was change, being able to make change, stay motivated and committed to the change. And I thought that really is something we all have in common. And when we stay strong in the center, we're able to always come back to that place, even if we veer off track. So I heard people kind of struggling with staying motivated or creating change in their life. So I wanted to talk about the 5 steps that I think are the most important ones in being able to stay motivated and to make change. Today we're just going to cover the first step because it's big and it's important, and each step along the way builds the foundation to make the changes that you want in your life. But what I found is unless you kind of have these things in place, the other stuff's hard. It makes the other stuff a lot harder, whether or not you want to lose weight, improve your communication, whatever it is you're trying to make a commitment to, unless you have these grounded foundational pieces. So they're really, really important. The thing is I'm not going to say these are 5 easy steps to, make change in your life. They're not easy. I'm going to be upfront about that, but they're doable. You can do it. And I have full confidence and faith in each and every one of you that if you put your mind to this, that you can make the changes that you want, to focus on what it is that, your intention of what it is you want to change while you're creating the foundation to help you. Okay, so let's get started. So let me share with you the story of what happened just a few minutes ago and how it relates to this topic. So the topic is about self-compassion. This is by far the most important first step in terms of making any change in your life. If you are not compassionate to yourself, toward yourself, changes will be really difficult to make. So think of it this way. I think of this analogy when I think about self-compassion, is I think about the things that we value. And when you value something, you put a lot of time and effort and love into it. Like our children, like our, some of the relationships we have. What we value, we focus on, and we also give our best to. The things we do not value, we don't. And if we don't value ourselves through the process of self-compassion, right? You may say, oh, I value myself, Tony, I take good care of myself. But when you stop to think about it, and we'll talk about compassion to see if you're actually doing it, is that you may think that you value yourself, but you might do some things that indicate that you really don't, that you're not showing yourself the compassion you need. So here's my story of what happened just 3 minutes before I hit the live button. Was as I was setting up my little studio here to be here with you, and I got my glass of water and I put it down next to me on the floor, and as I sat down and I was setting everything up, I was like, oh, that shade should probably be closed. So I got up, turned around, went to close the shade, and spilled like 32 ounces of water on my floor. And I had 3 minutes to get on. So I had a choice to make at that point. What was I going to do? Was I going to beat myself up, get myself really anxious and nervous and worried, and how am I going to do that, and then get online and be composed? Or I could just take care of it and just be really self-compassionate, like, oops, made a mistake, clean it up. By far, it took me a lot less time to just clean it up and be present in myself and be compassionate to myself so I can be here. My self-compassion in not beating myself up for making a silly mistake like spilling water helps me be present and grounded and ready to move forward. I'm using that as a little simple example because imagine how many times a day you are not so compassionate to yourself. Imagine how many times a day you make silly little mistakes and then you carry it around with you all day. How much harder is it to get anything else done sometimes? Sometimes we become consumed with all the little things that went wrong for the day. So I just have some notes. I just want to make sure that I am covering everything that I wanted to today. So why self-compassion? Well, one of the reasons that I love talking about almost any topic is when it is related to research. Then I'm like, that is really cool. That is rings my bell when I know there's actually research out there that indicates this stuff works. And self-compassion, and I will share other stories about self-compassion. I want this to kind of be brief today, but I have very heartfelt, connected reasons why this topic is also really important and passionate to me. So stick around for the rest of the week. You'll probably hear some of the more important stories that make this really important. But research shows that self-compassion decreases depression, grief. It helps with trauma. It helps with addiction, eating disorders. When we have self-compassion, when we work on that, we are able to tackle these really huge things. Well, if you can tackle the really huge things, then think about the small things that come up in your day, or the smaller things that come up in your life. So I really see this as a key point and something that you can also grow on. So what are the steps to self-compassion? What does it mean to be compassionate to yourself? Does it just mean to, I value myself or I like myself? It goes deeper than that. And there's actually I have 5 steps outlined. The things you want to do to help yourself cultivate this more self-compassionate attitude toward yourself. The first one is to acknowledge pain. That pain exists and that you feel it, that you see and feel and acknowledge your own hurt. What usually happens is we tend to want to avoid pain. We want to push it away. We want to escape it. And when we do those things, when we don't acknowledge that there's pain there, what we tend to do is engage in negative behaviors. Some of those negative behaviors can be overeating, staying in bed and choosing not to get out of bed to exercise in the morning. We might make poor choices about how we're going to communicate with our loved ones. We do things to avoid pain or to get away from it and not to acknowledge it and experience it. Here's the thing, pain is there, it's going to exist, and it wants to know that you know it's there. So if you don't do the acknowledging part, then it's going to come out in other ways. Those negative behaviors are all ways that pain is talking to you. So if pain is talking to you, you need to listen, and you really need to acknowledge that it's there. I will teach you one method for acknowledging pain. Maybe I'll do it toward the end of this session. If we run over, I'll do a separate one. But some of you have experienced heart-assisted therapy with me. I did a live that, and to help acknowledge pain or acknowledge any feeling, heart-assisted therapy is a beautiful method for being able to process and feel that particular emotion. So hang in there, we'll get back to that. But the first step in self-compassion is acknowledging that you have pain and that you feel it and that you see it. The next step is taking a step back from the negative self-talk. So another big piece for people is the voice in their head that tells them negative things about themselves, right? Like I spilled the water, and I could have, and as I spilled the water, I had that moment where I wanted to engage in that negative self-talk and say, oh, how stupid, I can't believe I did that. How could I forget I put it down? I just did it 20 seconds ago. But I didn't go there. I noticed that I wanted to go there. And I think that that's the first important step in all of this, is that you just simply start noticing your negative self-talk. I'm not asking you to do anything else but notice for right now that it's there. We do it so quickly, so automatically. We get hijacked into the negative self-talk. What I'm asking you to do this week, while you're working on your self-compassion, is to notice the times that you do it. And if you want to take that a little further, you can think of those times when you do that negative self-talk, when you engage in that, as those I'm not good enough stories. And when you notice it, you can say, oh, there's that I'm not good enough story again. There's that time that I'm telling myself that, I'm negative, or I'm not doing the right thing, or I can do better, or I'm not good enough. And you can just not expand on it. Just choose not to expand on it. Let it be there as the story that you see and you know outside of you as being a story that's there. So step one in this, if you want to start working on negative self-talk, you can just simply notice it. Or step two in that would be to notice it and just kind of leave it there and try not to expand on it, because you can link thoughts together and you can choose to go there. So that's a higher level step, is to not expand on it. But you can try that and play with that and see how that goes. Being kind to ourselves is probably the third biggest step in all of this. And since we have the negative internal self-talk, being kind to yourself would involve creating some kind self-talk, to create some kindness to yourself. Now, I talk to a lot of people about being kind, and they're like, oh, is that like affirmations and stuff like that? You remember, like, back in the day, and still in this day, people talk about self-affirmations. Affirmations are great. I am thinking more in the lines of when you're engaging in some of either the negative talk, or in periods of the day where you're not noticing any chitter chatter in your brain, to just remind yourself of the kindness that you have and the kindness that you give to others. That's one way of doing some kind self-talk to yourself. Another way of doing a kindness self-talk, to be kind and gentle to yourself, is to imagine yourself as a child, or think about a child that you really, really love to care for, and think about taking care of that child inside of yourself in a sweet, gentle way. So you can imagine yourself as that little girl or boy with a problem, whatever issues kind of popping up for you, and think about being gentle with that child and just holding that child and talking kindly to the child without trying to fix anything. So kindness self-talk is just around being kind, being present, and being aware with whatever the problem is that you're having for yourself. in that moment. Okay, the fourth important thing, and this is really big and maybe a difficult thing to tackle right away, all in one gulp, and may take a little work, is something called radical acceptance. Radical acceptance can be hard, and there's different pieces of radical acceptance. So radical acceptance, we can talk about radically accepting our feelings, kind of back to step one, where I talked about acknowledging pain. Having radical acceptance of our emotions is really important, to not beat ourselves up if we feel mad, sad, angry, hurt, disappointed, to accept that that feeling is there and that feeling is trying to tell us something. So that's one piece of radical acceptance. We also want to accept, though, another part of this is accept stuff that's going on in our life, the memories, the sensations, the situation, and the stuff that we have no control over. Unfortunately, we're going to lose loved ones. Unfortunately, we're going to get fired. We're going to lose our jobs. Unfortunately, some of us are going to get divorced. Unfortunately, some of us are going to find out some piece of information that is devastating at one point in our life, and we have to cope with that. And I'm not minimizing the fact that these things are really hard, because they are hard. But what I do know is what all those things kind of have in common is that we can't change them. And when we go through the struggle with the stuff that we can't change, then we add more suffering to our life. Okay, so we're already in pain. To be human is to be in pain. It is. It's something we all have in common. To suffer is optional. The suffering part is the part where we beat ourselves up over and over. We go back in our minds about how could that have happened, and all those things that we struggle with when situations happen that we have no control over. To be able to radically accept that this thing has occurred, to stay in the moment and be able to function while you are accepting and feeling the pain and acknowledging it, that is a process that will bring you more change in your life, will help you move forward. You won't beat yourself up as much. If you are working on any self-improvement, if something comes up that rattles your bones completely and you feel like, I can't continue taking care of myself because this really awful thing happened. If you can learn the art of radical acceptance, then you can still move on. It might bring you back a couple steps, but it won't feel like you're going all the way back to the beginning. So I can talk more about radical acceptance. One of the things to do is to think about the situation almost as if it's an object or a thing that you're holding inside of your body, and breathe room and space around it and let it be there. So you can imagine yourself not struggling with it, not trying to do anything with it, but noticing that, yeah, this really hard thing has happened in your life. Acknowledge it, feel it, hold it there, and breathe some space and air around it. That is the first step in terms of radical acceptance, is to allow it to be there. And that can take a lot of work. Again, I'm not minimizing any of this. The fifth most important thing is connectedness with others. To recognize that on this journey, we are all connected in some way. We do all share pain. As I mentioned earlier, it is part of human suffering. We can't get away from it. It's always going to be there. Bad stuff's always going to happen. But other people are going through bad stuff too. We are not alone. To be connected to other people and to share what it is you're feeling and going through is a huge step. So I think, and that's why I'm grateful for this group, and I'm grateful for all of you for being here, because you create that environment where we can all stay connected and share our stories and be part of a community that wants to move forward and wants to make a commitment to make improvements in our lives. To stay connected is to stay aware, that you're not alone. Isolation can really bring you back. When you think you're the only one who's in pain, then you are judgmental of your pain. So if you notice, the underlying theme to all of this is really to be non-judgmental too of yourself. So if you are, in this community, to notice that you probably share in a non-judgmental way, and to bring some of that kindness to yourself. So even when you're doing, kind self-talk, you can do it in a way that is non-judgmental. Okay, so I wanted to give you some action steps if you want to be challenged a little bit this week, and you also want to share your process with the group. I would love that. You can private message me anytime, or you can share with the group whatever you feel comfortable doing. But the action step is part one is the just noticing part. I just want you to start noticing the negative self-talk and imagine yourself kind of stepping back from the story and noticing the story. Notice that you're doing the self-talk. You can't change anything unless you notice it. So that's why that's really the initial first step. The next thing I would ask you to do, if you want to challenge yourself a little bit more, the next action step would be to check in with yourself like 3 times a day. Make a commitment to do this exercise 3 times a day. Just ask yourself, how am I feeling? And then check in and see what you think the feeling is. And if you can't label the feeling, this can be a hard thing for people, and that's okay if you can't label the feeling. Notice where it is in your body. Do you feel butterflies in your stomach? Do you feel heavy in your shoulders? Does your face hurt? Does your head hurt? Does your neck hurt? Do you feel tingles up and down your arm? Do you feel sweaty? Whatever it is, just write down. Notice how you're feeling, and just write down a line or two about what the sensation is in your body, or if you've labeled the feeling, what that feeling is. Okay. So I mentioned to you earlier, I have a few more minutes, so the last thing I wanted to do was to do a little heart-assisted therapy with you. This can help a great deal with all these pieces of self-compassion. It kind of pulls it all together. It's a way to notice the feeling, process it, acknowledge it, be kind to yourself, and give yourself some kind talk. Looking to see anything else. Yeah, it kind of incorporates all those pieces. So let's do it. Let's try it right now. What I want to add is that even though, I'm showing you this method that, you take responsibility for your own health and well-being, and you make a decision about whether or not you want to do this kind of technique, totally up to you. But whether or not you do, just keep in mind that all it is really a way to acknowledge and process the feeling. It's a quicker way of doing it. You can do it by also sitting still and just noticing what's going on in your body. I happen to love this method, and I use it with my clients all the time, and they love it too, and they show it to other people. So it helps them, and I'm really excited about that. So that's why I wanted to share it with you. So take a deep breath and let it out. Maybe one more. Let it out. And then if you remember, you take your hands and you put them over your heart, and you can repeat after me. I'm okay, even though I'm not okay. And I deeply and completely love and accept myself, even though sometimes I forget to acknowledge my pain. I deserve to be kind to myself. And then take deep 3 breaths. Then switch hands. I'm okay, even though I'm not okay. And I deeply and completely love and accept myself, even though sometimes I forget to acknowledge my pain. I do deserve to be kind to myself. 3 breaths. Last round, change hands. I'm okay, even though I'm not okay. And I deeply and completely love and accept myself, even though sometimes I forget to acknowledge my pain. I do deserve to be kind to myself. And take 3 deep breaths. Perfect. And this is a good time to check in with yourself. I did it as kind of I use the word sometimes to make it general, but you can do I'm okay, even though I'm not okay. And I deeply and completely love and accept myself, even though I'm feeling pain about the certain situation that's coming up in that scenario where you need to process that feeling. I might feel disappointment. You can do it. I feel disappointed about something that has happened. It's a great way to notice and process the pain and work through it. Pain, disappointment, hurt, anger, whatever the emotion is. Start off thinking about how much of that you feel on a scale of 0 to 10. Give it a number, do the process, and then check in again and see what the ending number is. If you go from a 7 to a 2, you're doing pretty good. You've really been able to process that feeling in your body. So thank you again for joining me. I will see you again live tomorrow at noon. We will work on step number 2. If you do your action steps, I'd love for you to check in and let me know how they go. Take care. Have a great one.